Unaware she is a billionaire, her husband divorced her after she became crippled, calling her a deadweight, then invited her to his wedding with her best friend to humiliate her, but her arrival shocked them all. Before we dive into this incredible story of betrayal and redemption, kindly hit that subscribe button and tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. Let's dive into the story. The ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel sparkled like a constellation brought down to earth. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors, while champagne flowed like water and the city's elite mingled in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. But Elena Castellano barely noticed any of it. She stood on the balcony overlooking the garden, her emerald dress catching the moonlight, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. At 28, she was already the vice president of Castellano Industries, her father's billion-dollar tech empire that had revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence. Everyone expected her to marry Connor Ashford, the hedge fund billionaire's son, or perhaps Marcus Chen, whose family owned half of Silicon Valley. But Elena's gaze kept drifting to the man by the champagne fountain. Vincent Kane didn't belong here, and he knew it. His rental tux was slightly too large at the shoulders, and he clutched his champagne flute like it might shatter in his hands. He was a junior analyst at one of her father's subsidiary companies, invited only because his boss had brought the entire team. From a single-parent household in the Bronx, Vincent had worked his way through community college and then Columbia on scholarships and sheer determination. "You look lost," Elena said, approaching him with a warm smile. Vincent's eyes widened. Ms. Castellano. I didn't expect. I mean, this is your father's gala. Call me Elena. And yes, it is. Which is exactly why I'm hiding by the champagne instead of making small talk about quarterly earnings. She studied his face, honest brown eyes, a nervous but genuine smile, hands that looked like they'd worked hard for everything they had. Tell me something real. What do you actually think about all this? Vincent hesitated, then laughed softly. Honestly, I think there's enough money in this room to solve hunger in 3 countries, and we're using it to talk about vacation homes and yacht upgrades. Elena's smile grew wider. Finally, someone who gets it. That conversation turned into an hour, then into a late-night coffee at a diner Vincent knew in Queens, then into weekend walks through Central Park, then into love. Real, unexpected, beautiful love. He's using you, her father, Roberto Castellano, warned 6 months later when Elena announced their engagement. The older man sat behind his mahogany desk, his weathered hands clasped together. Men from nothing who marry women with everything. They don't want love, mihija. They want a ladder. Papa, you came from nothing too, Elena countered. Grandmother told me you arrived from Naples with $200 and a dream. Exactly. Which is why I know ambition when I see it. Roberto's eyes were sad. But you're stubborn like your mother, God rest her soul. If you love him, I will not stand in your way. Just promise me, protect what we've built. Always. I promise, Papa. 3 months later, Elena walked down the aisle toward Vincent, whose eyes glistened with tears as he watched her approach. In his vows, his voice cracked. You chose me when you could have had anyone. I will spend every day of my life proving I'm worthy of that choice. For 2 years, they were happy. Vincent worked his way up in the company through genuine merit. Elena made sure of that, refusing to give him any special treatment. He never asked for it. They laughed together, traveled together, built a life that felt real and earned. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in October, Roberto Castellano suffered a massive heart attack in his office and died before the ambulance arrived. Elena's world shattered. The board of directors had no choice. Roberto's will was crystal clear. Everything went to Elena. At 30 years old, she inherited Castellano Industries, all of it. The patents, the subsidiaries, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolio. $17 billion in assets, and the weight of her father's legacy. Vincent congratulated her at the funeral, held her as she cried, and said all the right things. But something changed. It started small. The board respects you, obviously, Vincent said one evening, swirling his wine glass, but they're old school. They might take you more seriously if I was more involved. As your husband, I could be COO. We'd be a team. Vincent, you've been with the company for 3 years. COO requires decades of experience. Right, of course. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Just trying to help. The requests became more frequent. More pointed. More resentful. I sit in middle management while my wife runs a billion-dollar empire, he said during an argument. Do you know how that looks? It looks like I inherited my father's company, and you have the career you earned, Elena replied, exhausted from a 16-hour day restructuring the European operations. I didn't choose this, Vincent. It chose me. You could choose to share it. This isn't about sharing. This is about you wanting something you haven't earned. Vincent's face darkened. There it is. I'm not good enough. Not blue blood enough. Just the poor kid from the Bronx who got lucky marrying the princess. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. He started staying late at the office. Coming home smelling of perfume that wasn't his. Taking phone calls in the next room, speaking in hushed, intimate tones. Elena tried to ignore it. She was drowning in work, navigating hostile takeover attempts and shareholder disputes. She needed to believe her marriage was solid, even as the foundation cracked beneath her. Then she saw the credit card statement. Jewelry she'd never received. Hotel rooms on nights he'd claimed to be at conferences. Charges at restaurants in the city when he'd texted he was working late. Her hands shook as she cross-referenced the dates with her calendar. Confrontation built in her throat, but before she could act, her phone rang. Mrs. Kane, this is Detective Morrison with the NYPD. There's been an accident. The world became fragments. Glass. Screaming metal. Her car flipping. The drunk driver running the red light at 60 miles per hour. Her body, ragdoll loose, slamming against the interior. Her spine, oh God, her spine. Then nothing. She woke 3 days later in Mount Sinai Hospital, her body immobilized, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that beeped with every heartbeat. The pain was extraordinary, but worse was the numbness. From the waist down, she felt nothing. Dr. Sarah Patel stood at her bedside, her expression professionally sympathetic. Mrs. Kane, you suffered severe trauma to your L1 and L2 vertebrae. The swelling around your spinal cord is significant. We need to wait for it to reduce before we can determine the extent of the damage. Will I walk again? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. It's too early to say. Some patients regain full function. Others. Dr. Patel's pause said everything. We'll know more in the coming weeks. Vincent arrived an hour later, flowers in hand, his face drawn with what looked like concern. Oh God, Elena, I came as soon as I heard. He kissed her forehead, held her hand, said all the right things. For 3 days, he played the devoted husband. Brought her favorite foods. Read to her. Updated her on the company, where her executive team had things under control, assuring her not to worry. On the 4th day, Elena woke from a nap to find Vincent in the hallway, his back to her room, phone pressed to his ear. I know, he was saying, his voice low and harsh. No, she's still. They don't know yet. Could be permanent. Elena's blood turned to ice. Yeah, well, if she can't walk again, that changes everything, doesn't it? Vincent laughed, but it was cruel, empty. I know that sounds terrible, but Jesus, Tash, I can't do this. I can't spend the rest of my life taking care of someone who can't even stand up. Tash, Natasha Williams, her best friend since Columbia. Her maid of honor, the woman she'd trusted with everything. Vincent's voice dropped even lower, but in the hospital's quiet, Elena heard every word. Between you and me, part of me wishes she'd died in the accident. Clean, quick, the whole empire would be mine without a messy divorce. Now, I'm stuck. Elena's heart stopped beating. Not metaphorically. She felt it stop, then start again with a painful lurch that made the monitors spike. I have to go, Vincent said quickly. I'll call you tonight. Love you too. He walked back into the room with a smile. Hey, you're awake. How are you feeling? Elena looked at him, really looked at him. The man she'd chosen over princes and billionaires. The man she'd loved with her whole heart. The man who'd just wished her dead. Tired, she whispered. Very tired. Rest then. I'll be here. But Elena didn't rest. As Vincent scrolled through his phone, occasionally glancing up to offer reassuring smiles, her mind raced with cold, crystalline clarity. She'd been a fool. Her father had been right. And now she was trapped in a hospital bed, possibly paralyzed, married to a man who wanted her dead. Unless, when Dr. Patel came for evening rounds, Elena waited until Vincent stepped out for coffee, then spoke quickly. Doctor, I need to ask you something. And I need you to trust me. Dr. Patel listened, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something that might have been respect. You want me to lie to your husband, the doctor said slowly. Tell him your paralysis is permanent when we don't know that yet. I overheard him on the phone, Elena said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Wishing I'd died. Calling me a burden. I need to know who he really is. What he'll really do when there's nothing left to gain from me. Mrs. Kane, please, just for a few days. Tell him the swelling has reduced and the news is bad. That I'll never walk again. I need to see his reaction. Dr. Patel was silent for a long moment. I could lose my license for this. I'll sign anything you need. Take full responsibility. But doctor, I have to know. Something in Elena's eyes must have convinced her. Perhaps drive. Patel had seen enough of Vincent's barely masked impatience. The way he looked at his phone more than his wife. The perfume on his collar that didn't match the flowers he brought. Okay, the doctor said quietly. But only for 72 hours. Then we tell the truth. When Vincent returned with coffee, drive. Patel delivered the news with professional gravity. Mr. Kane, Mrs. Kane, I'm afraid the swelling has reduced enough for us to assess the damage. The injury to the spinal cord is severe. I'm very sorry, but the paralysis appears to be permanent. Mrs. Kane will not regain the use of her legs. Elena watched Vincent's face carefully. For just a moment, less than a second, something flickered across his features. Not grief, not devastation, relief. Then the mask snapped back into place. Oh God, oh no, Elena, I'm so sorry. He held her hand. He said the right things. He even managed to produce tears. But Elena had seen the truth in that unguarded moment. That night, he stepped into the hallway again. Elena had requested a glass of water from a nurse, timing it perfectly so the room would be empty but Vincent wouldn't suspect she was listening. It's permanent, she heard him say. Yeah, doctor confirmed it today. A pause. I know it's horrible, but Tash, I can't. I just can't. She's going to need round-the-clock care. Physical therapy forever. She'll never be the same. And the company? God, the board is going to eat her alive when they find out. A CEO in a wheelchair. In tech, they'll force her out. Another pause. Longer. You're right. I need to think about my future. Our future. This is for the best. Elena will understand eventually. She's smart enough to see that Vincent needs to move forward with his life. Vincent. He referred to himself in third person, as if he was already separate from her. Already planning his exit. Elena closed her eyes and felt the last piece of her heart that had loved him turn to ice. Vincent waited 3 more days before serving her with divorce papers. He brought Natasha. They walked into Elena's hospital room together, Natasha in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She had the decency to look uncomfortable, at least. Vincent did not. Elena, he said, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality. We need to talk about the future. About what's realistic. Elena looked between them. Natasha had the grace to blush. Vincent and I, we've been seeing each other. For how long? Does it matter? Vincent cut in. Things between us were falling apart long before the accident. You know that. Because I wouldn't make you COO of my father's company. Vincent's jaw tightened. This isn't about that. This is about facing reality. You're going to need specialized care. Full-time nurses. Accessible housing. Your whole life is going to be about managing your disability now. And you can't handle that. I'm 32 years old, Elena. I can't spend the rest of my life. He caught himself, but Elena heard it. The exact words from his phone call. This isn't fair to either of us. Elena let the silence stretch. Then, so you're divorcing me, while I'm in a hospital bed. Because I'm paralyzed. Don't make this more dramatic than it is, Vincent snapped. I'm being honest. More honest than most people would be. I'm not cut out to be a caregiver. You deserve someone who is. How noble of you. He slapped the papers onto her bedside table. It's a fair settlement. The prenup stands. You keep the company and your family assets. I'm asking for $3 million from our joint accounts as a buyout of my interest in our shared property. $3 million. The total amount in the joint accounts that she'd never touched, that had been filled with her own money but legally belonged to them both. That's everything in those accounts, Elena said quietly. It's fair compensation for 3 years of marriage. You're really doing this, right now, while I'm lying here unable to walk. For the first time, real anger flashed across Vincent's face. You're not the only one suffering here, Elena. You think it's easy being your husband. Living in your shadow. Everyone knows I'm only something because I married you. Well, you know what? I'm done. I'm taking what's legally mine, and I'm going to build something myself. Something I can be proud of. With my best friend. Natasha spoke up, her voice soft. I'm sorry, Elena. I never meant for this to happen. But Vincent and I, we connected. We understand each other. What it's like to always be in someone else's shadow. My shadow, Elena clarified. You were in my shadow. As my friend. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about, Vincent said. Everything is about you, your company, your money, your legacy. I'm drowning in it, Elena. You're nothing but dead weight now, and I can't keep carrying you. There it was. The cruelty, naked and undisguised. Get out, Elena whispered. You have 30 days to respond to the papers. My lawyer will be in touch. Vincent turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I did love you. Once. Before everything became about proving I was good enough for the great Castellano legacy. They left. The door clicked shut, and Elena Castellano began to plan. The next 3 months were a masterclass in strategic deception. Elena signed the divorce papers. Let Vincent take his $3 million. Watched as he immediately launched Kane Development Group, a real estate investment firm targeting luxury properties in Manhattan and Brooklyn. She watched him buy a penthouse in Tribeca. Watched him propose to Natasha with a ring that cost more than most people's cars. Watched them celebrate on social media, their happiness on full display. And while the world watched Vincent Kane's meteoric rise from nothing, Elena worked in secret. Her team of lawyers and financial advisors met with her late at night in her hospital room, then later in her new wheelchair-accessible penthouse. She'd been released after 6 weeks, still in a wheelchair, still permanently paralyzed. Only drive. Patel and Elena knew the truth. The feeling had returned to her legs after 3 weeks. The spinal cord hadn't been severed, only badly bruised. With intensive physical therapy, which Elena did in secret, in a private facility she accessed through underground tunnels, she was walking again within 2 months. But no one could know. Phase 1, Elena told her CFO, Marcus Rivera, a man who'd worked with her father for 30 years. Make it look like Castellano Industries is collapsing. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Make it look like. Set up shell companies in the Caymans, Singapore, and Luxembourg. Transfer our key assets into blind trusts. Create a cascade of paperwork showing financial losses, fictional ones. Get our media contacts to report that we're facing catastrophic debt, failed investments, potential bankruptcy. Make it look real. Make it look like my paralysis broke me, and I'm running the company into the ground. Elena, this could tank our stock price. Temporarily. We'll buy it back through the shell companies at pennies on the dollar. Then when we reveal the truth, we'll own even more of our own company than before. This is incredibly risky. I know, but I need Vincent to believe I'm finished. Broken in every possible way. I need him to feel safe enough to show his true colors completely. Marcus studied her face. This isn't just about the company, is it? He wished me dead, Marcus. And when that didn't happen, he took my best friend, my money, and my dignity. This is about showing the world exactly who Vincent Kane really is. Phase 1 launched 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. The first article appeared in the Wall Street Journal. Castellano Industries reports massive Q3 losses. Then Bloomberg. Sources say tech giant faces bankruptcy without intervention. Then TechCrunch. The fall of an empire. How Elena Castellano lost everything. The stock plummeted. Investors panicked. The board called emergency meetings. And through it all, Elena played her part perfectly. She appeared in her wheelchair at board meetings, looking tired and defeated, agreeing to restructuring plans that were actually just moving money around her shell companies. She gave a tearful interview to Forbes about losing her father, her health, and now her company. Vincent, she knew, would be watching every second of it. And he was. Through mutual acquaintances, she heard that Vincent was celebrating. Told you she couldn't handle it, he'd said at a dinner party. She's brilliant at operations, but without her father, she's lost. And now in that wheelchair, she can barely handle her own life, let alone a billion-dollar company. Elena smiled when she heard that. The trap was working perfectly. Before we get to the explosive climax, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You're not going to believe what Elena does next. Drop a comment telling us what lessons you're learning from this story so far. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by courier to Elena's penthouse. Cream-colored, expensive cardstock. Her name written in calligraphy that probably cost $50 a letter. She opened it in her wheelchair. She was always in the wheelchair when anyone might see, and read. Mr. Vincent Kane and Ms. Natasha Williams request the honor of your presence at their wedding, Saturday, September 15th, the Plaza Hotel, 5 p.m. Tucked inside was a handwritten note from Natasha. Dear Elena, I know this might seem strange, but Vincent and I would be honored if you could join us on our special day. We understand if it's too difficult, but we wanted to extend the invitation anyway. Please know that we've made certain the venue is fully accessible for wheelchairs. The entrance, the reception hall, everything. We made certain of that. Please come if you feel able. With love, Natasha. Elena read it 3 times. The cruelty was breathtaking, not just inviting her to watch them marry, but making sure she knew they'd planned for her wheelchair. Making sure she knew they expected her to roll into their celebration in front of all their friends and society's elite, a broken woman watching her husband and best friend celebrate their happiness. They wanted her there. They wanted to parade their victory in front of her. And she was going to give them exactly what they wanted. Just not the way they expected. Marcus, she said into her phone, accelerate timeline. I want everything ready by September 15th. And get me Romano Vitali, the private investigator. I need evidence. Everything Vincent did with that $3 million. Every investor he lied to about his self-made origins. Every person he told I was an incompetent cripple who drove her company into the ground. I want bank records, emails, recordings if possible. Everything. Elena. And leak to the press that Castellano Industries is making a major announcement the week after the wedding. Something about my stepping down, selling the company, whatever sounds realistic. Make sure Vincent hears about it. I need him feeling absolutely secure. You're sure about this? Elena looked at the invitation again, at Natasha's carefully worded cruelty disguised as kindness. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next 4 months were preparation. Elena continued her secret physical therapy, building her strength until she could not only walk but do so in heels. She worked with a personal shopper to find the perfect dress. She coordinated with her security team, because she'd need serious security for what she had planned. And she worked with Romano Vitali to build an ironclad case against Vincent. The evidence that came back was damning. Vincent had told investors in Kane Development Group that he'd built his $3 million seed funding, from the ground up, through strategic investments and consulting work. No mention of Elena, no mention of the divorce settlement. He'd told real estate partners that Elena was mentally unstable after the accident, that she was making erratic decisions that destroyed her father's legacy. He'd used the $3 million to leverage deals, promising returns he couldn't possibly deliver, running what Romano suspected might be a borderline Ponzi scheme. And through it all, he'd told anyone who would listen that he'd escaped a marriage that was suffocating him, that Elena had been controlling and manipulative, that he'd finally found real love with Natasha. He's built his entire image on your destruction, Romano reported. Everything he has, everything he is in the business world right now, is predicated on the story that you're a failure and he's a self-made success. Perfect, Elena said. That makes what I'm about to do so much sweeter. September 15th approached. Vincent and Natasha's faces appeared in society magazines, their love story breathlessly reported. The self-made businessman and the marketing executive, Natasha had conveniently left her job at Castellano Industries right after the affair started, finding love against all odds. Elena read every article, memorizing every lie. 3 days before the wedding, she walked 5 miles on her treadmill without assistance. Her legs were strong. Her spine had healed completely. Dr. Patel called it a miracle, though they both knew it was just anatomy and time and intensive work. You're absolutely sure about this? Dr. Patel asked during their final appointment. I'm sure. It's going to cause quite a stir. That's the point. Elena practiced her speech in the mirror. Practiced walking in her heels. Stunning Louboutins in deep crimson. Practiced the exact expression she wanted on her face. Not anger, not hatred. Pity. The night before the wedding, she barely slept. Not from nerves. From anticipation. Tomorrow, Vincent Kane would learn what it meant to underestimate Elena Castellano. The Plaza Hotel glittered like a fever dream. Vincent and Natasha had spared no expense. $3 million could fund quite the society wedding. The grand ballroom was transformed into an enchanted forest, with trees wrapped in lights, flowers cascading from the ceiling, and champagne fountains on every corner. 300 guests filled the gilded space: investors, business partners, society figures, and mutual friends who'd carefully chosen Vincent and Natasha's side in the divorce. Elena arrived at 5:30 p.m., deliberately late, when the ceremony had already begun. She wore the wheelchair into the lobby. The chair was real. She'd kept it for exactly this purpose. She'd dressed in it, transferred into the car in it, and now wheeled herself toward the ballroom entrance with her security team following discreetly behind. The ushers looked uncomfortable when they saw her. One rushed forward. Ms. Castellano, they said you might come. There's an accessible entrance around. I know where I'm going, Elena said softly. Thank you. She wheeled through the doors just as the officiant was saying, if anyone has any reason these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The room fell silent. 300 heads turned toward the interruption at the back of the ballroom. Elena sat in her wheelchair, backlit by the lobby lights, an image of tragedy and grace. Vincent's face went white. Natasha's hand flew to her mouth. I'm so sorry, Elena called out, her voice carrying in the silent room. Please, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to witness my ex-husband's happiness. The murmuring started immediately. Phone cameras came out. Vincent's mother gasped. The officiant, flustered, looked to Vincent, who nodded tersely. It's fine. Please, everyone. Elena is welcome here. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had changed. People kept glancing back at Elena, who sat perfectly still, a slight smile on her face. When Vincent and Natasha were pronounced husband and wife, when they kissed to polite applause, Elena clapped along with everyone else. The reception began. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. Elena sat at a table in the back, declining food, accepting only water. People approached her carefully, offering condolences that felt more like curiosity. She was gracious to everyone, speaking softly about her physical therapy, her hopes for the future, her happiness that Vincent had found love. She was the picture of dignified defeat. At 8 p.m., Vincent approached her table. Elena, he said, his voice low. I didn't think you'd actually come. Natasha invited me. It seemed like the gracious thing to do. Vincent glanced around, making sure no one was close enough to hear. Look, I know this is awkward, but I heard about the company. I'm sorry it's been so hard. Are you? His mask slipped, just slightly. You're not made for this, Elena. Running an empire alone. Your father had a gift you just don't have. It's not your fault, but it's not your problem anymore, Elena finished. I understand. Exactly. Relief flooded his face. I'm glad you get it. And hey, Kane Development is doing amazing. Maybe someday, when you're ready to sell what's left of Castellano Industries, I could help broker the deal. Give you a fair price. How generous. I mean it. No hard feelings. We can be civil. Of course. Vincent smiled, patted her shoulder in a way that made her skin crawl, and walked away. Elena waited. At 8:30, after the first dance and the cake cutting, the band took a break. The best man was meant to give another toast. Elena wheeled herself toward the microphone. Her security team, 6 former special forces operators she'd hired specifically for tonight, moved into position around the room. No one noticed yet. She reached the small stage and paused. Then, in full view of 300 people and dozens of camera phones, Elena Castellano stood up from her wheelchair. The room gasped. She stood in her crimson heels and her black gown, a stunning Versace that hugged every curve she'd worked so hard to rebuild. Her legs were strong beneath her spine straight. The music stopped. People screamed. Literally screamed. Vincent's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. Elena walked to the microphone with perfect grace, her heels clicking with each step. Hello everyone, she said, her voice amplified through the sound system. I hope you're all enjoying the celebration. Vincent, Natasha, congratulations. Marriage is a sacred bond. I should know. I was married once, to a man I loved with all my heart. Vincent tried to move toward her, but one of Elena's security team stepped in his path. Not threatening, just present. Many of you know my story, Elena continued, her voice calm, almost conversational. Terrible car accident. Paralyzed. Lost everything. Had to watch as my company, my father's legacy, crumbled because I just wasn't strong enough to hold it together. She let that hang in the air. Except that's not quite true, is it? Natasha was crying. Vincent looked like he might vomit. The paralysis was temporary. My doctors knew it after 3 weeks. The spinal cord was bruised, not severed. With intensive physical therapy, which I did in private, at a facility most of you don't know exists, I've been walking for 6 months. Chaos. People shouting questions. Phones recording every second. Elena raised a hand, and the room quieted. I chose not to tell anyone. I chose to let people believe I was broken. And I did that because I needed to know something. I needed to know what kind of man I'd really married. She looked directly at Vincent. 4 days after my accident, while I lay in a hospital bed, unable to move, I heard my husband on the phone. I heard him tell his mistress, my best friend, that he wished I'd died in the accident. That the whole empire would be mine, if I had. I heard him say, I can't spend the rest of my life taking care of someone who can't even stand up. The room erupted. Vincent's face went from white to red. Natasha sobbed openly. So I asked my doctor to lie, Elena said. To tell Vincent the paralysis was permanent. I wanted to see what he'd do. Would he stay? Would he honor the vows he'd made? She paused. 3 days later, he served me with divorce papers in my hospital room. He called me Deadweight. He took $3 million from our joint accounts, money that was mine, that I'd never touched, and he started Kane Development Group. People were looking at Vincent now, understanding dawning on their faces. For months, Vincent has told everyone who would listen that he's self-made. That he built his company from nothing. That he escaped a marriage to a controlling, unstable woman who drove her father's company into bankruptcy. Every investor in this room heard some version of that story. Didn't you? Heads nodded. People started standing, moving away from Vincent's table. But here's what Vincent doesn't know, Elena said, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. Castellano Industries isn't bankrupt. It's stronger than ever. I moved our assets into shell companies and blind trusts. I created a paper trail of fictional losses. I got media contacts to report our collapse. I bought back our own stock at rock bottom prices. I did all of this while pretending to be a broken woman who couldn't handle her father's legacy. She smiled. I faked the permanent paralysis to test Vincent's character. And I faked the company's bankruptcy as a trap. Vincent finally found his voice. You're insane. This is slander. Is it slander if I have recordings? Elena pulled out her phone. Romano, please. From the back of the room, Romano Vitali stood and played an audio file. Vincent's voice filled the ballroom. Yeah, well, if she can't walk again, that changes everything, doesn't it? I can't spend the rest of my life taking care of someone who can't even stand up. Between you and me, part of me wishes she'd died in the accident. The whole empire would be mine without a messy divorce. Natasha's scream was drowned out by the crowd's reaction. I have this, Elena said calmly. I have emails where Vincent lied to investors about the source of his seed funding. I have bank records showing he used my money, our divorce settlement, to leverage deals while telling people he was self-made. I have testimony from 12 different business partners where he called me incompetent, unstable, and broken. She looked around the room at the investors, the business partners, the society figures. So I have a question for all of you. If Vincent Kane could betray the woman who loved him when she was at her most vulnerable, if he could steal from her, lie about her, wish death upon her, what makes you think he won't betray you? The silence was deafening. I'd recommend examining your contracts with Kane Development very carefully. I'd recommend asking where your money actually went. I'd recommend asking yourselves if a man who would serve divorce papers to his paralyzed wife in a hospital bed is really someone you want as a business partner. She turned to Vincent and Natasha. I wish you every happiness in your marriage, she said. You deserve each other, truly. Then Elena Castellano walked off the stage, her heels clicking, her head high, and left the Plaza Hotel while 300 people stood in stunned silence and chaos erupted behind her. By Sunday morning, the video had 50 million views. By Monday, CNN was running segments about it. The hashtag #ElenaWalks was trending worldwide. By Tuesday, every investor in Kane Development Group had pulled out. Vincent's entire business collapsed within 72 hours. The bank froze his accounts pending fraud investigations. Partners who'd trusted him were filing lawsuits. Natasha left him on Wednesday. Elena watched it all from her penthouse, sipping coffee and reading the Wall Street Journal's front-page story, The Greatest Business Revenge in Modern History, How Elena Castellano Faked Everything. Her phone rang constantly. Interview requests, book deals, movie offers. She ignored them all. On Friday, exactly 1 week after the wedding, Elena held a press conference. She stood at a podium, no wheelchair in sight, and addressed the cameras. Castellano Industries has completed its restructuring. Our stock is up 40% from its pre-collapse levels. We've acquired 3 major competitors who thought we were failing. And I'm pleased to announce a new initiative. The Castellano Foundation will donate $100 million to support domestic violence survivors and people with spinal cord injuries. Reporters shouted questions. Ms. Castellano, do you have any comment on your ex-husband's current situation? I wish him the best, Elena said simply. People reveal their character in crisis. Vincent showed me his. I showed him mine. I hope he learns from this experience. Some people are saying you were cruel to orchestrate such an elaborate revenge. I didn't orchestrate revenge, Elena interrupted. I orchestrated a test. Vincent passed or failed based entirely on his own choices. He chose to abandon his wife when she was paralyzed. He chose to steal her money. He chose to build his success on lies about her failure. I simply revealed the truth. If that's cruel, then maybe we need to reconsider what cruelty actually means. What's next for you? Elena smiled. I'm going to honor my father's legacy. I'm going to build Castellano Industries into something even greater than it was. And I'm going to live my life on my own terms, surrounded by people who earned my trust rather than people who demanded it. She left the podium to thunderous applause. Elena stood in her corner office on the 60th floor, looking out over Manhattan. Castellano Industries now had partnerships with every major tech company in the world. They'd just been named one of Fortune's most admired companies. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Patel. Saw you on the Forbes list. Number 3 youngest self-made billionaire. Your father would be proud. Elena smiled. Another text, this one from an unknown number. I'm sorry. For everything. I was wrong. V. She deleted it without responding. Some people thought she was cold for that. But Elena had learned something important in the past year. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. She'd forgiven Vincent. Forgiven him for being weak, for choosing greed over love, for showing her exactly who he was. But that didn't mean he deserved access to her life. She'd moved on. There was a soft knock on her door. Marcus Rivera stepped in. The board meeting is in 10 minutes. Thank you, Marcus. You know, he said, pausing at the door, I wasn't sure about your plan. The risk seemed astronomical. And now, he smiled. Now I think your father knew exactly what he was doing when he left everything to you. You didn't just save the company. You made it stronger. We made it stronger, Elena corrected. I couldn't have done any of this alone. Still, the way you handled Vincent, that took courage and patience most people don't have. It wasn't courage, Elena said softly. It was necessity. Sometimes the only way to prove who you really are is to let someone else prove who they really are first. She gathered her notes and walked to the boardroom. No wheelchair, no hesitation, no fear. Just Elena Castellano, walking into her future with her head held high and her father's legacy secure in her capable hands. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This story teaches us so much about life, betrayal, and character. People reveal their true selves when they think you have nothing left to offer. Vincent loved Elena when she had wealth and power. The moment he thought she'd lost both, he abandoned her. True character isn't shown in good times. It's shown in crisis. Never underestimate someone just because they're going through a hard time. Vincent made the fatal mistake of thinking Elena was broken just because she was in a wheelchair. He confused temporary circumstances with permanent defeat. That assumption destroyed him. Patience is more powerful than immediate revenge. Elena could have exposed Vincent right away. Instead, she waited. She planned. She built an ironclad case. She let him build his empire on lies, so the fall would be that much harder. Sometimes the best revenge is giving people enough rope to hang themselves. The truth always comes out. Vincent built his entire life on lies about Elena. Lies about her competence, her stability, her character. But you can't build a real life on a false foundation. Eventually, truth crashes through deception like sunlight through a window. Protect what matters. Elena's father told her to protect what they'd built. She honored that, even when it cost her everything personally. She didn't let heartbreak destroy her professionally. She separated her business from her feelings and saved both. And finally, you don't need revenge when you have the truth. Elena didn't destroy Vincent. She simply revealed who he really was. The rest followed naturally. The most powerful weapon you have is living honestly while others choose deception. Now we want to hear from you. Drop in the comments what lessons you learned from Elena's story. What would you have done differently? Would you have confronted Vincent immediately, or would you have waited like Elena did? Tell us where you're watching from. Are you Team Elena or Team Vincent? And please, before you go, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our captivating, entertaining, and life-changing stories. We bring you real lessons about human nature, relationships, and the power of truth every single week. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Someone who's going through a betrayal. Someone who thinks they've lost everything. Someone who needs to remember that broken circumstances don't mean a broken spirit. Until next time, remember, your value isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Stand up, literally and figuratively, and show the world exactly who you are. God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.